Back in 2003, the National Football League implemented the Rooney Rule, and the Rooney Rule mandates that NFL teams interview at least one minority candidate for a head coaching job. There's been a lot of talk about that and a lot of controversial talk about whether or not this works. And I had to talk to somebody who's a diversity, equity, and inclusion expert. And I have Stefanie Johnson, Dr. Stefanie Johnson, a professor at the University of Colorado Boulder. And she's also the author of a Wall Street Journal bestseller called Inclusify, The Power of Uniqueness and Belonging to Build Innovative Teams. Stefanie, had to have you talk about this. This is such an important thing to talk about. How are you doing?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
Good. I'm glad. I'm so glad that you're well. So let's look back 18 years ago when the NFL implemented the Rooney Rule. What were your thoughts on it and how successful it could be to diversify head coaching opportunities in the league?
I would have thought it were much more successful than it has become. I think when we look at the stats, it looks like nothing's really changed. Although, I think depending on how you slice the data, you can say, well, there's more, there's changes in some arenas and there have been higher numbers, but really, let's just say nothing's changed. And then I think some of my research would say, that's actually what we'd expect, because when you interview one candidate of color or one woman candidate, it really doesn't change hiring preferences at all. So in 2020, the NFL actually changed the rule so that they would interview two Black coaches for each head coaching position. And so maybe that will create more change in the near future. Obviously, it didn't this year. This year's like not good.
No, it wasn't good. It wasn't. It
No.
wasn't good at all. But let's. You brought up the numbers, right, Stefanie? So when you look at these numbers, you have African Americans. They're about 70% of the players in
Yep.
the NFL, but only 9% of the head coaches. And there's three Black coaches 18 years ago when they started the rule. Right now
Yep.
in the NFL, there's only three Black head coaches, and in the last 4 years, 27 head coaches were hired. Three were Black. Um,
Right.
the numbers. Specifically about Black coaches being hired in the NFL, as you said, it really isn't good at all. So it begs the question: Is the Rooney Rule working at all with the NFL?
I'll say no. It hasn't worked at all. It's just like it's a disaster. It's an embarrassment. I mean, I think the rule is well intentioned. I think we need to do something. I don't think that the lack of success around the Rooney Rule means, oh, we should have no rules, because I don't think that's going to make things any better. Maybe some increased accountability around not just interviewing, but actually hiring and selecting. I think we need to do something. Like, if we're looking at a total lack of change, and I think this is true in the NFL, but I think it's true more broadly in society and in corporate America, if nothing's changing and you just keep doing the same thing, how can you expect things to be different?
Right, right. There's no way you could expect it to be different. Now, there's been research that's been done by yourself and others that shows that some of the top CEOs in this country, in America, have implemented the Rooney Rule into their hiring practices of their company. And the rule's actually been working for them. It's not for the NFL. Can you talk a little bit about why that is?
Yeah, in some cases, I think they've been very intentional about interviewing more than one, not just doing the original Rooney Rule, but what I call like the Rooney Rule 2.0, interviewing two. But I really think what it comes down to is an underlying commitment from those CEOs, a real belief in the benefit of diversity, and really making it part of their core values. And I mean, I don't know any owners in the NFL, so I don't want to sound judgy, but I just don't think they have that commitment, or we would see really different outcomes.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up too, right? Because it has to be about the desire to actually want to be more diverse and more inclusive, right? And then when you also look at business in this country, as you know, and I know, no matter what it is you do, a lot of it has to do with who you know sometimes. And I want to bring up something to you. There was a 46-page report that was published by the NFL in 2020, and the research showed by the league that 9 of 32 head coaches were either the son or a father of a current or former NFL head coach. Also, 63 coaches, this includes coordinators and position coaches, were biologically related or related through marriage, with 53 of those coaches being white. So as I said, who you know has a lot to determine on how you can make it or be consistent in an organization. But that's problematic, right, as well too, because if you keep hiring people you know or who just look like you or think like you, that's not a good thing for any organization, right?
No, oh my gosh, you have to send me that. I have not seen that
Oh, you
report.
haven't seen that data? Yeah, I just came across
No,
that. I
I
will
love
send it
that
to you.
so much. And I feel like I say this all the time, like some of my research on corporate boards, you can actually analyze and show really similar effects. Maybe you're not related, but you at least, have network ties. You went through the same MBA program at Harvard, or you served on another board together. And so there's so much of that. It's embarrassing. I mean, I'm smiling like such a big smile at those statistics. They're horrible. I should be like vomiting, not smiling, but it's just like those are the exact problem, right? Like it is who you know and not what you know or not what you can do, but like whose whose friend are you? Those ties really matter. And if we look at communities of color, historically, because we don't have as strong of a legacy of wealth and educational attainment, and this is true inside sports, but outside sports too, obviously we're going to see those disparities just repeat themselves.
Right. Yeah, you absolutely are. And this is why we're seeing the cycle. Or, as we talked about at the top, not much has changed in 18 years, right? So you've conducted research though that shows that the Rooney Rule could work in the NFL, as we've seen with other businesses. So the questions then will be, well, you kind of answered this why the NFL is not making it work. It might just be the want to and desire to not do it and become more diverse. But then here's the question I have to ask, Stephanie. There's data that supports that this is better for your bottom line in terms of business. And the NFL as a league has shown that they've been about business.
Yeah.
So why don't they understand that diversity is better for their organization?
I don't know that. I think someone needs to do a study. Maybe there probably is someone who's done this study. If not, I'm going to do this study next weekend
Nice.
because I bet you could see that. There's very small sample size of NFL teams that have had black coaches, but you know, even with those small numbers, there are some like extraordinary examples that I would think would show that teams with black coaches actually are more likely to win games. And I would think maybe increase fans, and it's hard to tell right now amidst COVID, but attendance at games, stuff like that. So I don't know why they wouldn't. I mean, I guess it's just like you can read all the statistics, right? And I love statistics. It's like my favorite thing in the world, but there's two halves of the human decision. It's like the statistics, that's the mind, but there's also the heart. And it doesn't matter what the statistics show, when you have that, well, this is the person I feel comfortable with, or I like this guy, or I feel like he's going to do a good job. People go with that gut over the statistics, over the data, because they can, right? If you're the owner of the team, then you can kind of do whatever you want.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to tell them not to do whatever they want. But since there's been a lot of conversations around this, and you've talked about it over the years, do you think the NFL comes to a point where they can't ignore the data, or the noise around this has become so loud that they have to create more, be active, I should say, in terms of creating more coaching opportunities for both minorities and even women within the NFL?
Yeah, maybe so. I'd like to think that part of the reason the NFL went to the interview two was some of my research that showed that when NFL teams did hire a black coach, over in all cases but one, they had interviewed more than one black coach. And so maybe that's part of the reason they went that way to say, let's interview two. But, maybe the difference between when I studied it and today, it's just last year, is that those teams that interviewed two black coaches, they did so by choice versus they were told they needed to this year, right?
Right.
So that really gets to that intentionality thing of like, what are you trying to achieve? I mean, I would say they have to listen to the data, but I don't know. I would say they have to listen to the almighty dollar though. And so you can choose which sports teams you kind of invest in, right? As fans, if you don't believe in their policies, then I mean, I'll say that's what I do with my own shopping. Um,
Right. It seems as though it hasn't hurt the NFL yet financially, and if it hasn't hurt them financially, maybe that's also, as you said, not giving them the impetus to actually try to change this. And until it does, that may not happen. But I don't know. We have to try to be optimistic, I guess, and keep showing the data and keep presenting the ridiculousness,
Yeah,
as you
I think,
said as
and they
well.
can look to the NBA. I think there's just like such a different record in the NBA in terms of diversity, but then also like if you watch interviews with players, inclusion too. Like I don't think there's such a strong racial divide in the NBA the way there is in the NFL. So maybe there's something we can learn from like our fellow sports.
I agree with that, but they have to want to learn, like you said already. Stephanie, that's Dr. Stefanie Johnson. Again, she's a professor at the University of Colorado Boulder and author of Inclusify. Definitely pick up that book. Really great. Stephanie, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.